I'm just really having trouble imagining life without my wheelchair. I mean, yes, I say my disability is no longer my disability, and I do believe that. My wheelchair is what your car is to you. I mean, my wheelchair has been my life, and to imagine life without that is hard.
Welcome to the Nick Speaks podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. Tune in every Tuesday, and don't forget to subscribe. And now your host, Nicholas Comstock.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this brand new episode of the Nick Speaks podcast, the podcast where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community and everything else in between. I am your host, Nick Comstock. You guys, I am so glad that you're here with me on this Tuesday, and I hope if you're starting your morning with me, it's going great. And I hope if you're ending your day with me, it's going great. I hope if you're having lunch with me, you're having some Taco Bell, because that's my favorite. Anyway, I'm so glad you guys are here, and happy 250th birthday, America. We celebrated that this past weekend, and I hope you guys had some fun. I hope you guys had a barbecue. But I hope you guys realize how blessed we are to be in this nation. And I know that I am blessed to be here. And I had a great weekend with my caregiver. Before I get into the crux of today's episode, I want to tell you what I did this weekend, more so an experience that I had. So, 100% of my caregivers are from another country. And my caregiver that I had this weekend is from Sierra Leone, Africa. And I've had a lot of African food over the years because for the last several years, most of my caregivers have been from Africa, Nigeria, and other places in those countries. And so I've had my share of African food. And what I've come to like is jollof rice. Now, the best way I know how to describe it to make sure that the Americans understand what I'm talking about is it's a really spicy Spanish rice is the way I would describe it. For those, if you've had Spanish rice, this is like 10 times better than Spanish rice, and it's also a whole lot spicier. So, jollof rice. And I've had a lot of it over the years. And this weekend, I had the best jollof rice and fried chicken that I have ever had. And it is at a African restaurant. It is called International Delicious Kitchen. Uh, Now my staff told me it's in Westerville, but I was just checking on my smart speaker, and it said it's not in Westerville. But I tend to believe my staff. So if you live in Westerville, you guys need to check out International Delicious Kitchen. It it'll change your life. Now, I have to tell you that you're gonna wait about 25 minutes for your food because they make everything fresh to order, and it is fantastic. When I saw all of the pictures of all the food on the outside of the restaurant, I immediately wanted to try everything. I'm gonna go back and try peanut butter soup and some other things. Um, but the jollof was just so moist. They gave me 4 big pieces of chicken. The chicken was just so moist and juicy, and it didn't get dry and sticky like what happens with a lot of rice after it's been, on your plate for a while. It it tasted real buttery to me. I asked my staff if they had put any butter if the restaurant had put any butter in their jollof rice. But he said, no, it's just oil. But for some reason, it tasted really buttery and really flavorful to me. So if you're in the Westerville area, this is not a sponsored ad. Check out International Delicious Kitchen. It is fantastic. It'll change your life. Plus, if you want to expand your food palette, that's a good way to go, in my opinion. So that's what I did over 4th of July weekend. It was really great, and I really enjoyed the jollof rice and the chicken that I had at International Delicious Kitchen. And I recommend everybody in the Columbus area and the surrounding areas to look them up and go check them out. You will not be sorry. Now, guys, now that I got that out of the way, I wanted to talk with you today about what life would look like outside of my wheelchair. If you've been following me for a few weeks, you know I did an episode called "I Believe This Is the Beginning of My Healing Journey." If you have not listened to that episode, I would encourage you to go back and listen to that, because I honestly truly believe that I will not be in a wheelchair too much longer. I am embracing my miracle. I am no longer accepting the fact that this wheelchair that I'm sitting in right now is going to be a part of my life forever. And I believe soon and very soon that my miracle is going to manifest and I will be healed completely. And I will be running just like all of you who are out there listening to me, whether you're a caregiver or just a regular Joe Schmo out there listening. I haven't heard the term Joe Schmo in a long time. Bringing out nostalgia today for America's 250th birthday, I guess. But whether you're a regular Joe Schmo or whether you're someone with a disability, I have gone through um a little bit of a spiritual transformation, I would say, and I've had a little bit of a spiritual shift to where I believe that this wheelchair is not the end of my life and it's not the rest of my life. So if you haven't listened to the beginning, to this is the beginning of my healing journey. It's one of the most recent podcasts that I've done. I would encourage you to do that and then come back and listen to this one. So anyway, I want to talk about what life would look like for me outside of my wheelchair. And I will say to you guys, I'm kind of scared, to be honest, because the wheelchair is all I've ever known. People have always had to take care of me 24/7. And to finally potentially go without that is a scary thought. You know, I'm thinking about things like, and these are just carnal things, but they're things that matter to me. You know, how in the world would I wipe my ass? Me being no longer in a wheelchair, because up to this point, people are doing that for me. And what's that gonna look like for me? I have a very weak stomach, and I don't like to look at my own bowel movements. And am I gonna pass out on the floor because of the smell of my own crap? Um, Things like that. I think about things like that often. How am I gonna clean myself up? How am I going to uh go into society after so many years of being in a wheelchair once my miracle manifests? Um, and there are thoughts in my mind. Am I gonna miss being in a wheelchair? Um, things like that. Are people going to really care for me like they have been outside of my, outside of my wheelchair? Are they going to care for me like they have been? Are people going to pick up my phone now that I'm outside of the wheelchair? Those type of things, thinking about those type of things, thinking about marriage outside of, a wheelchair, is that going to be a possibility? And I know I've said from the very beginning that I believe marriage is a possibility inside a wheelchair. Um, Although what I have found is that it's very hard to find somebody because of the fact that I'm a wheelchair user. So what's marriage going to look like for me outside of that? Am I going to be the same person? Am I going to go into caregiving after being in a wheelchair for so many years? Am I going to provide care for people that are in the same position? Uh, you know, just even imagining not having someone with me on a daily basis, right now my caregiver's in the next room. Well, when I'm in no longer need of a wheelchair, I'm actually going to be by myself. Am I going to be able to handle that? Uh, I'm going to have to remember things like, hey, take your phone. Don't forget your wallet. Make sure you have your license and ID with you. Driving is going to be another totally different experience. And I actually do believe that God's already beginning to heal my vision. I can't wait to actually go to the eye doctor this year. It's coming up in September. So I'm interested to hear what the eye doctor is going to say because I believe that my miracle has already begun to manifest in my eyes. And the reason I believe that is because I picked up a card the other day with some really fancy handwriting on it, and I was able to read the whole thing. And I've never been able to do that before. So I really do believe that my miracle has began to manifest, and it's began to manifest in my eyes. So, what is driving going to be like for me? What is my first car going to be like? You know, um, my brother Jordan uh got me fascinated with Mustangs because he was fascinated with Mustangs when he was in high school. And I remember when computers, first came out and they were a big deal. Of course, they came out in the 80s. I wasn't around in the 80s, but computers really got big in the 90s and the 2000s, obviously. And I remember for a screensaver on our family computer, I put pictures of a Mustang because I like the way the car looked. And so, am I going to be driving around in a Mustang? Am I going to be driving around in a minivan? What am I going to be driving around in? I don't think I'll be driving around in a Tesla. Those things scare me a little bit. But it's just, am I going to be able to make it outside of being in a wheelchair? Am I going to be able to do things for myself outside of being in a wheelchair? Am I going to have the same respect? Am I going to have the same love from people that I had when I was in a wheelchair once I get out of it? These are all things that are going through my head. And this is why I encourage people with disabilities, don't let the disability that you have become your complete identity. Have other things that you enjoy doing, which is one of the reasons why I've changed the premise of the Nick Speaks podcast. And it's no longer just dedicated to the disabled. We're talking about things that I want to talk about. Last week, we talked about sow a seed to meet your need and how that was irritating to me. And I don't like that mantra. And if you haven't listened to that, go back and listen to that one. Um, but yeah, I just often wonder, you know, is being outside of a wheelchair what I really want too? I've had that come across my mind. Um, is it what I really want? Is this just was was May 18th, 2026 just a fluke, which I talk about in This Is the Beginning of My Healing Journey, which is why I encourage you to go back and listen to it. I've started to wonder, was May 18th, 2026 just a fluke when I thought, oh, I don't have to be in a wheelchair the rest of my life. You know, I can speak it into existence. Was that just a fluke? Was I just burnt out on disability? And I got to be honest with you, I am. I'm burnt out on fighting for everything. I'm burnt out on, a shoestring budget. I'm burnt out on things like that. But then again, I also realize that people fight for things outside of a wheelchair and they're not in a wheelchair all the time. They're still having to figure out how they're going to pay their bills. They're still having to figure out, do I want to stay in the same career that I've been in for the last 20 years, or do I want to change after 20 years? So, you know, the stresses I the stresses of being in a wheelchair and being outside of a wheelchair are dramatically different, but in a lot of ways we deal with the same issues, careers, relationships, struggles with friendships. Am I going to be able to manage all that? Just the fact of me driving a car on the road is something that I have not been able to get out of my head. Like, what's that going to be like? I mean, I've driven my wheelchair to McDonald's before, when I had a staff member tell me they weren't going to do it because they were too busy. Although we had the transportation to do it, they were just being lazy. So I decided to drive my wheelchair to McDonald's. But what's the difference between that and driving a car? Dramatically different. And I understand that there are wheelchair users who drive cars. To me, that wheelchair users who drive cars, that to me is magnificent in itself, because that's something I would be scared to do even as a wheelchair user. Is, what if I get in a car accident and my chair malfunctions, or what if I'm by myself and I fall off my wheelchair lift? But it's one of those things too where I'm like, what if I'm out, what if I'm out after I've come out of the wheelchair and I hit a tree, with a car, just all these things. And I'm just really having trouble imagining life without my wheelchair. I mean, yes, I say my disability is no longer my disability, and I do believe that. My wheelchair is what your car is to you. I mean, my wheelchair has been my life, and to imagine life without that is hard. I talk about how wonderful it would be, and yes, I believe it would be wonderful. Um, because I would never, have to wear a brief again. I would never have to depend on someone else to put me in bed. I would never have to depend on someone else to get me up. I would never have to depend on someone else to get me in the shower. I would never have to wait on someone else to take me where I want to go. You know, if I'm late somewhere after I get out of the wheelchair, it would be my own fault. So I couldn't blame a caregiver. There's a reason to stay in a wheelchair. You can blame your caregivers for everything. If you're not in a wheelchair, you can't. Um, but just different things. And so, yeah, I just has anybody else really thought what their life would be like without a disability? I mean, blind folks out there, have you thought what it would be like if you had your sight? You know, I'm sure it would be a wonderful thing to see flowers, but I had Angela Fowler on here several months ago, and she's a blind lady, and she told me she wouldn't want to be sighted because now she would have to learn to do everything with sight. And so I'm just wondering, has anybody else had this thought of what would my life be post disability once I got healed or if I got healed? Now, for me, I totally believe that the manifestation of my miracle is on the way. I told you just a few minutes ago, I believe it's starting in my eyes, and I believe my vision is getting better. Um, but I'm just really struggling. I talk about how I've talked about in the past how it's been a struggle for someone like me with a disability to have friends. Is that struggle still going to remain post disability? Am I going to want to have friends that want to go out on the town? Am I going to be able to find a romantic partner who uh, wants to be with me? I mean, I'm sure that'll be easier because I'm not in a wheelchair. I won't have a brief. I won't have all the things that I need help with because I'll be no longer in a wheelchair. So I'm sure, I'll have a job and my romantic partner will too because I am not having a romantic partner without no job. Because I am not going to be anyone's sugar daddy and I don't expect them to be that for me. So, yes, whoever my future partner is out there, you will be required to have a job. Alexa, stop. Oh, it's just, I don't know, flashing around. But anyway, so yeah, there's just all these things. And actually, since I've recorded I believe this is the beginning of my healing journey. Since I've recorded that, I've actually had a lot of anxiety of all these questions that I've had that I've shared with you today. And so I just thought that this would be a good episode to talk through uh, with you guys. And I really look at you guys as my friends. And so I just thought, this is what I'm thinking about. What is life going to look like post disability? What is life going to look like without a wheelchair? And honestly, even though I'm glad that I had that revelation on May 18th, 2026, it's kind of scary of to think about, you know, are people going to think that I'm as important? Are people going to think that I'm as, growing up, I was told that I was special and that I was special to God because of the fact that I had a disability. Am I going to be as special to people post wheelchair? Am I going to be as special to God post wheelchair? Um, so yeah, just a lot of anxiety. And so what I'm trying to do is enjoy where I am and not worry about all these things. Although I will have to say, I worry about them a lot. And I'm just trying to enjoy life and wait for my manifestation to come, or my miracle. What am I going to do for a job as after my miracle manifests itself? Go around and tell my testimony, maybe become a caregiver. I know it's too late in age to become a cop because that's what I said I would always be if I wouldn't have been in a wheelchair to begin with. So I know it would be too late to become a cop. So would I still be a motivational speaker? Probably. Um, would I possibly become a caregiver? Maybe, depending on the situations. Would I go back to school? I don't know. School's not for me, really. I mean, I could go back to school regardless of my wheelchair or not. And I don't think school is really for me. So the idea of trying to build a life out of a wheelchair, outside of a wheelchair, is really taboo and scary. And I just wanted to come share that with you guys today. And you're probably like, Nick, what the hell? Yeah, this is where I've been in the last few weeks. I really do believe that this is the beginning of my healing journey. And I really encourage you to go back and listen to that episode and hear the genesis of it and hear how I came to this point. But there are some scary things that I talk about. There are some scary things that I think about all the time. Um, are women going to find me attractive? Am I still going to be attracted to men? You know, that's another thing because right now I'm not sexually attracted to women. But is that going to change once I get out of the wheelchair? Because then the woman doesn't have to wipe my butt. But then again, even though I'm attracted to men right now, the men would still have to do that. So, I mean, is any of that, is my sexuality going to change post wheelchair? I don't know. And I guess that's the biggest fear, the fear of the unknown. So, what am I going to do right now? Well, until my miracle manifests and I wake up and I'm running down the street. That's another thing. I don't think I'll start out running. Everybody thinks that I'm gonna have this big miracle and I'm gonna be in a service somewhere. And I've even had dreams of that. So I'm not knocking that. But I've had dreams of me getting up in the middle of a church service and just running down the aisle. But I'm like, if I run too fast, am I gonna trip and fall on my face? Like I don't want that to happen. I don't want my first experience of me running out of my wheelchair to end up me having a nosedive in front of God and everybody at church, you know. So there's just so many different things. I think about I've had a dream since I posted the episode that I keep referring back to today. I've had a dream of going up and down an escalator because that's one of the first things I want to try is going up and down an escalator post wheelchair, and I've already decided things that I will not try post wheelchair. Number one, skiing. I will not try skiing post wheelchair. I do not want to. If my miracle manifests and I get out of this wheelchair, I'm going to do everything I can not to get back in it. So skiing will not be on my list of things to do. Skydiving will not be on my list of things to do. Riding up and down an escalator, finding out what that's going to be like. Um, I do want to try that. Like I said, I don't know if I'm going to try running first or walking really fast. Uh, I wonder if I will have a love for sports when I get out of the wheelchair, because I always said that the reason I don't really like sports is because I haven't been able to play it. So will I have a love for sports once I'm no longer in need of a wheelchair? I don't know. I think one of the sports that I would like to try is um basketball, maybe baseball, maybe wrestling, although as a gay man I may like that too much. Um so I'm I'm not exactly sure, will I like sports? I don't know. Will I like the same foods? I don't know. I just all these things have come in my head, and I'm just trying to figure out how to enjoy life until this happens. I mean, I'm still enjoying life, but still I have all these thoughts in my head. So I just want to know, what do you guys think? I mean, do you guys think I'm off my rocker? Do other wheelchair users think about what their life would be like if they all of the sudden were uh dramatically healed and could get up and run and walk? And that's another thing. Would I jump? That's probably another thing I wouldn't do. Like, I wouldn't get on a trampoline. I think those things are dangerous. So I don't know if I would do that. Um, Backflips, I don't think I would do backflips. And I don't think I would jump high off of a diving board either. But maybe I would enter into a swimming competition. Oh, I love to swim. When I was 7 or 8 years old, for several years, within that time frame, like 7, 8, 9, 10, I would go to pool therapy, and you couldn't even tell that I was in a wheelchair when I was in pool therapy. And I enjoyed I enjoy that. And so maybe I'll become an Olympic swimmer, you know, post wheelchair. Or maybe I can do it before post wheelchair, so I could get used to both ways. And that's another thing I think about too. What are my muscles gonna feel like? Like right after post wheelchair. Say I'm able to like just wake up one day, pop my eyes open, and swing my legs over the bed. Like, what is it gonna feel like after so many years of not being able to bear weight on my legs? Are my muscles gonna feel like jello? Are they just gonna be able to work right away? Like, I don't know. That's the greatest fear. I said it earlier. The greatest fear is the unknown. But I wanted to come and just share these thoughts in my head with you guys today. Um, I hope you don't think I'm rambling too much, because they're just all kinds of different thoughts. I'm gonna have to cook for myself, you know, and am I gonna be able to handle raw chicken and raw beef and you know, putting all my ingredients in and all that stuff? And am I gonna burn myself or burn my house down once I start cooking on my own and things like that? Or I could become the next Emerald Lagasse. And I say Emerald Lagasse because I think I'm chubby like he is. Of course, I don't know what he looks like these days, but um, you know, I kind of always pictured myself as an Emerald Lagasse. Bam, bam, bam. Always loved watching that on the Food Network when I would go to my grandparents' house. growing up in the summer. Always loved watching Emeril Lagasse, but he scared the crap out of me every time he said "bam, bam, bam." Um. Anyway, love that. But so yeah, like, how would my cooking work? And you know, how much money would I be able to make? Would I make thousands of millions of dollars now just simply because I'm out of a wheelchair? Ugh, all the what if this happens and what if that happens? What if it doesn't happen? I've just been going through all that lately since I saw that television broadcast with Andrew Womack, The Gospel Truth, and he was talking about how you don't have to accept your the disability you've been given. And for some reason it just opened my eyes. But now that my eyes have been open, I'm just like, yeah, but what about all the stuff that normal people do and taxes and all that? And I know people in wheelchairs do taxes and all this stuff, but I'm just like, yeah, but people in wheelchairs have help. And what am I going to do when all the help goes away? So it's just been my thought. So I would just love to know what you guys think. And I know I've said so a lot, and I know I've said and a lot of other things over and over again. So sorry for the repeating, but that's where my heart's been for the last several weeks. And I just wanted to share it with you. Life outside of a wheelchair. What does it look like? Let's talk about it down below. Thanks for listening to this podcast, the Nick Speaks Podcast, the podcast where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud about the issues that matter to the disabled the most. And we speak up and speak out and speak loud about everything else in between. I'm your host, Nick Comstock. Thank you so much for watching this episode today. And please give us a 5-star rating on all of our platforms. And if you haven't subscribed on YouTube and hit the notification bell so that you can be notified every time a new episode drops on Tuesday at 7 a.m. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nick Speaks Podcast, where we speak up, speak out, and speak loud for the disabled community. If today's conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a new episode. You can find Nick across all platforms by visiting his link tree in the show notes. And please leave a comment to join the conversation. Until next time, keep speaking up, keep speaking out, and keep speaking loud.